Hello, everyone. I'm Linda Nickell, and welcome to the Happiness Hour. You can find the schedule for upcoming presentations on my website at lindanickell.com. To get the schedule in advance, subscribe to the Happiness Hour newsletter. Tonight's guest is Cathy Kuhlman. Cathy is a nature photographer based in Pennsylvania, a Click Pro Elite member. Her work spans from sweeping landscapes to vibrant cityscapes. However, it was her passion for flowers that led her to discover the distinctive artistry of Lens Baby lenses. Today, she is proud to be one of the select creatives chosen to represent the brand as a Lens Baby trailblazer. In tonight's presentation, Botanicals, the big, the macro, and the abstract. Cathy will share practical techniques to help simplify your surroundings, allowing you to better focus on your subject. She'll guide you through breaking down a landscape into manageable sections, framing the scene, and zooming in to create striking floral portraits. Whether you're capturing sweeping views or intimate details, Cathy will show you how to reveal the beauty of nature in fresh, unexpected ways. You can connect with her through her website at linktree/Cathy Alice Photography. And if you're on Instagram, you can find her at Cathy Alice Photography. And I'll be sure to link those in the show notes. Welcome back to the Happiness Hour, Cathy.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Okay, I skimmed over your bio like I know you or something, but if I missed something important and you want to share that, please get that in. I sometimes when I write the bios or I look at what I want to talk about, and then I kind of forget. Hey, some people have like a long laundry list of great
Oh,
accomplishments that I'm missing. So if
yeah,
there's something there, please take
yeah. No,
advantage.
there's not much more. I do have a one of my frames has that stuff on it, maybe one or two other things, but you touched based on the most important ones already.
Great.
So tonight we're going to talk about botanicals. Now, when Linda and I were talking about what I was going to do tonight, and actually she kind of mentioned botanicals, and as we were talking, she also said to me that when she walks into a big garden, sometimes she feels very overwhelmed. And in all honesty, I could relate to that when I first started taking pictures. And I wanted to take pictures of flowers, but I was watching people's pictures of landscapes. I felt very overwhelmed too. So I thought it was a really good idea to do a presentation like this so that we could show you how to break things down. But then I went and Googled botanicals because I didn't know what botanicals encompassed. And it really is very simple. It's just relating to plants. So it doesn't just have to be flowers, it can really be any kind of a plant. So I did think about this a little bit as I was shooting for the presentation tonight. Linda was able to go over and do all the highlights for me. I've been published in a couple of places and I am self-taught. I have no formal like college training or even high school training on photography or anything related to it. Um, so let's talk about how we got here and maybe why you want to stay through the whole thing. Um, if you've ever been really excited to walk into a botanical garden and then stopped and said, where do I start? Oh, this place is so pretty, but how do I take pictures to help me remember where I am? Or how do I take pictures that allow me to be creative? And that is usually my thought process when I go into a garden. And actually, that still overwhelms me sometimes. In this session today, though, I'm going to talk about ways to break things down, um, to work through your feelings, to simplify what you see, and how to focus on what, in the end, might be your target image. We'll look for ways to frame your subjects, maybe the scene, a flower, to create an unusual flower portrait. Um, Then we'll go one step further and learn how to create some abstracts. When you leave here tonight, I want you to find ways to create images that are uniquely yours. One of the reasons why I use Lens Baby is because if I'm standing shoulder to shoulder with 3 other people, I don't want my images to look like theirs. When we post on Instagram or Facebook or share, I don't want my work to look just like everybody else's. I want it to look like mine, or at least different from theirs. So that's where I'm going to head tonight, and that's what I hope to accomplish. So ultimately, what I want to do is go from the picture on the left to the picture on the right. The picture on the left is the East Conservatory at Longwood Gardens. And I took this picture back either at the end of January or February when I started compiling my images for the presentation. And it was after the Christmas display had come down, but obviously before anything spring is blooming. And this actually made it a little bit more challenging for me. Longwood changes its plantings fairly often. Even though I live within an easy half-hour drive of Longwood Gardens, almost every time I go there, the displays look somewhat different. And I still think of creative ways to shoot there every time. My heart, though, is in the image on the right. I absolutely adore these images that are abstract, but still have some sense of reality in them for the most part. So the image on the left, I can be shooting elbow to elbow with anybody, and we're all going to come out with the same image. The image on the left was shot with a Nikon 24 to 70, 24 to 75. I probably shot this at f/16. It is an everything in focus image. This is a great image for me to remember what the whole scene looks like, but it's not an image that's going to reflect me when I go home and go through my images or I post them. This could be anybody's image. I want people to see an image that's going to be me. I would hope you would want people to see an image that reflects you. I'm going to talk next about a couple different things, a little bit of gear, and I'm just going to highlight these things really quickly. I will also talk about techniques, and the same thing. I'm going to highlight them to give you some ideas, but I really want to walk you through exploring how I go from the image on the left to the image on the right. But I want to talk about the techniques and the gear first. So gear suggestions, obviously the camera of your choice. You can bring a diffuser, a tripod, a flash. The only item in that list that is absolutely essential is the camera of your choice. I will caution you though, if you plan to take a diffuser, a tripod, or a flash into public gardens, if you're not on private ground somewhere, find out if they allow those things in. I know from experience, Longwood Garden has changed their policies. Tripods are not allowed inside the conservatory at all anymore. You're not supposed to have diffusers. They don't want flashes. You could probably get by with one that may be on your camera, but they're trying to get away from, basically, it was the people going in and doing portrait photography. But I do have a friend who went in with a huge diffuser and was told to put it away because it was portrait equipment. She was shooting flowers. So look beforehand. I especially don't want to be carrying a tripod and the weight of it if I'm not going to be able to use it. So as far as what camera to bring, you can bring a DSLR, a mirrorless, a point and shoot, a cell phone, whatever camera you have and works for you. I will say the same thing about your lenses because I realized as I was going on tonight that I never did a slide about lenses. But the first image that I took, I told you it was with a 24 to 70. Typically when I go out, I will only carry 2 or 3 lenses at the most with me. and I make do with what I have. And I'm going to talk about a tip for getting by with the minimal amount of gear in just a little bit. Ooh, went the wrong way. So a diffuser, really quick, it's an object that you can use to soften the light or disperse light over your subject. You can use it to block direct light, sunlight, especially from hitting your subject. Diffusers are usually collapsible. A lot of times they are white. Sometimes they have a colored option too. They can be gold, silver, or a combo. I like using them best outside in the gardens when direct sunlight is making the light on my flower particularly harsh. Okay, tripods. Any tripod will work as long as it can hold the weight of your camera and your lens. It can really be helpful if you happen to pick a very heavy lens or after you've been shooting for a while, but now you're carrying the tripod and your lens around. Tripods can also limit your compositions. I like to be able to move around, get in, around, and under. So unless I am using long exposure as one of my options for shooting that day, my tripod's sitting in the car. You can use flash if flash is what you do. I can't comment on any techniques on flash. I have them. I have, a flash for on camera. I have a ring flash. I have modifiers for my flash. They have not seen the light of day in years. I also think that sometimes they can limit your creativity and your compositions, but there are ways that they can help. So you need to take those techniques that you're used to using and figure out how to use them for yourself. To create a pleasing composition, all of the typical rules apply. The ones I'm going to talk about here today are rule of thirds. I'm sorry, I forgot to pull out my golden spiral image. I am going to talk about depth of field, leading lines, use of color, negative space, and movement. And just really quickly, in case you don't know what rule of thirds is, think of putting a tic-tac-toe grid on an image. What is in focus or the main attraction in your image should fall on either the upper or lower horizontal lines, the left or right vertical lines, or on the intersection of either one of those lines. This is not really so much of a rule as a guideline. As you can see in this image, my little wispy things here, and I forget they were seeds that fell out of some flower, I don't remember what, sort of meet that, sort of don't, but what I'm trying to get at is this is not dead center. Most people who don't know what they're doing will center their subject, and it looks like everybody else's image. I want to get you away from that. This is on a vertical image. The center of my flower is down here near this lower right intersection on the grid. And this is what it looks like if it's on a vertical line. So you kind of get the idea. Next, we're going to talk about depth of field. Depth of field describes how much of your subject is in focus. If you are shooting wide open, typically you are shooting towards the lower numbers on the aperture on your camera. On lens baby lenses, the aperture is actually on the lens or the optic itself. Most cameras, you can set that within the camera, or with a lot of other lenses, I should say, you set that within the camera. But if you're shooting it like f1.4, 2.8, even f4 on a lens baby lens is considered you're shooting fairly wide open. And this allows you to blur a good part of your image. If you're shooting closed down, so that would be the higher numbers, f16, 22, 30, whatever, 32, I don't know. I'm not sure I have any lenses that go that high. But that's typically when everything in your image is in focus. I like shooting close to closed down or close to wide open because I find it tells a better story. It draws your eye to one particular part of your image. If you're looking for leading lines within your image, they can be physical attributes or they can be created using light or color. In the top image, this is the fold, that line that you see coming from the upper right down to the, or the upper left, excuse me, down to the lower right, is the fold of a blue poppy. So I've used that line, and it's not a harsh line because it's the fold of a flower, and the difference in the color to draw your eye right to the little pistils or stamen or whatever little center part of that flower is called. In the bottom image, while this is really a very dark image, I start in the bottom left-hand corner with lower light, and then it gets gradually lighter as we get up to the part of this flower, the bud that hasn't bloomed yet. So here I am using the difference between the light and the dark and a little bit of the texture to draw your eye through that image. That's what I want you to see when you look at a flower. You can also use color for your image. When I am doing one of my Instagram loops with my friends, one of the things that I love, and I say, oh, I just love the pop of color. So typically you'll have one main color through an image, but then you'll have something that just pops. In the top image, it's a little bit of the white and it's a lot of the yellow that surrounds it in this blue poppy. Blue is also a very cool color compared to the red that's in the bottom. So the colors can create a mood within your image as well. So I like to do negative space a lot. I think it makes a tiny part of a flower or a tiny flower itself hold more weight in an image. And it's considered negative space when the subject takes up less than half of the frame. The other areas of the image can be almost anything. It can be a wall, it can be trees, it can be light, it can be shadow, but the one thing that it needs not to have is any distracting elements. In the bottom image, I have a little tiny bit of color on the left-hand side of this image, and I considered cloning it out, but it also created a sense of scale in this image. What's off to the left doesn't really draw your attention because my flower on the right-hand side is much bigger in proportion. So this image on the bottom is still considered one with a lot of negative space. There's a lot of ways to add real movement or sort of like implied movement in an image. Catching a water drop falling off of a leaf is one way of doing that. There are at least 3 different types of movement in photography. One of them is suspended, one of them is considered motion blur, and then there's also something called visual flow. This image here is obviously suspended movement. You're waiting for that to fall. It's not actually falling, but you can sort of tell how the drop is like elongating a little bit, and that's usually typically what happens before it falls. So I'm kind of in that instance implying that movement is going to happen. In the image on the left here, my pink country roses, I am using intentional camera movement. And when you use intentional camera movement, you're moving your camera during a longer shutter speed. So the movements can be very different. I have a video I'm going to show you a little bit about all the weird kind of movements I will do and try. There is no magic equation. There is no magic movement that you can use every single time. The movement of your camera um, can be almost anything you want as long as you like the final result. Panning is also considered motion blur. Now, I don't have any images of panning here, but if you don't know what panning is, think of images that you may have seen with a car or a bike. And if you're taking this image, you're moving with the car or the bike, and you have a fast enough shutter speed that you can freeze the bike, but the movement behind you or behind the bike will blur because you have just frozen the bike, but you're moving your camera at the same time, so everything else behind it is blurry. You can also have subject movement. Now, I don't know a whole lot of photographers who go to all the trouble to, make this long thing and then wait for the wind to come. I guess it's something that you could try. It is not something that I've ever used, but in my research, I found out that that's actually considered photography movement. Visual flow was something that when I learned this term, I said, oh, this is what I'm all about. Because that's a lot of what my lens baby lenses do for me. So visual flow creates an environment to draw your eye through the frame naturally. The image on the top right was shot with Lens Baby's newest dedicated lens. It's not an optic, and it's the Sweet 22. And this has, I think, probably the most blur of any Lens Baby lens. But the way that it pulls the out of focus parts of the image make the image feel like it's moving. But what you have in focus in the image is tack sharp. So this is a great example of visual flow because it looks like it's moving, but it's not. Okay, now we're on for the fun. This is kind of why we're here today. We're going to talk a little bit about the main event. I'm back to that first picture where I showed you we're going to go from this to this. And so in this image, I think I told you I shot it with a 24-70 Nikon lens. And it's everything in focus. So I probably shot this at f/16. Oh, let me go back. When I looked at this scene, I tried to figure out what was going to be my next thought process. When you walk into a garden you've never been to, you may think about advice, and I know I have gotten it. And a lot of people say for a photographer, put your camera down and walk around. Get a feel for things, get a feel for what it is you might want to do, how you might want to shoot it, what else is there. A lot of times when you go into a conservatory, you're there for a limited amount of time. By the time you go through and look, and especially if it's crowded, you may not have time to come back and spend as much time as you want shooting or any time in certain places. So my advice to you is grab that shot in the beginning, similar to this one, that is all in focus. At least I sort of have an idea of what this room looks like. And then what I'm going to do is move my feet. I'm going to walk closer or a little bit around what's directly in front of me to see what it is that interests me that I might want to shoot next. So in this case, it was the fountain. So now I'm using the same lens, and this lens is a zoom lens. So I have control over, how much of the what I'm looking at is going to be in my frame. So now I'm only shooting at f/3.5. I'm not shooting at f/16 anymore. But I have my fountain in focus. Even at 1/320th of a second, though, I have some blur in the water that's flowing out of the sides of the fountain, which I really kind of like. You have some over here, which it looks like the water is literally like all just like running over like a pool, or like if you saw a bathtub running over. But on the other side, you almost see droplets. Now they're big because they're expanded and moving, but I created something here that I really liked, but I still have enough definition in my background to know maybe even what plants are there, if I could name them. Ask me if I can, and I'm going to tell you no. But what all I did here was move my feet. I got a little closer, I composed with my lens, and I took another image. I'm not ready to leave this area though. So all I did here was move to the left of the fountain, a couple more feet over to the left, and I have a completely different composition. I was really curious about this red and burgundy-ish, maybe brownish plant. So now that's what I focused on. I took a little bit of liberties in my rule of thirds, but I'm okay with it. I've been a lens baby person for a very long time, and I'm all about breaking rules. This one doesn't bother me. But I have this in focus. And again, there's enough detail still in the rest of this, even at f3.5, that's allowing me to know what is here. I'm not just putting it all off into so much blur that you can't tell what's there. There's still somewhat of a story to tell. Now, the next image might surprise you a little bit. You don't see this in the original image. This was just off to the left of this. So literally all I did was turn my body just a little bit. I didn't even really need to move my feet because these yellow orchids happened to be there. Now, because I was so close, and I'm still using my 24-70, I got as close as I could with that lens to still get focus on these orchids, although it's not the greatest. The flower up here is probably the one in focus when really it probably should have been this one. But here I have my background all off in blur and you really can't see what it is. Now I'm talking a little bit of another different story. These are the flowers that are in focus, and this is what I want you to see. I want you to see the details in them. Where my heart really went when I saw that whole big display, though, was at these little ground roses. And again, I'm still shooting with my 24-70. I will tell you that probably 99% of what I shoot these days, if I'm in gardens, is with a lens baby. Probably the only thing I don't really use a lens baby for is if I'm trying to shoot the deer or the fox in my backyard, or maybe occasionally a bird. I don't do too much of that. But I did the best I could with my 24-70. It's not a macro lens, but I was bound to determine this day only to use that one lens. So I just took that big scene back here and turned it into this. I'm going to do something a little bit different. It's going to seem like the same place. This is the opposite end of the room that we were just in. This is actually a door, kind of looks like a window, but that's just where I was standing before, and I was facing in the direction where technically I'm standing now. Same lens again. I'm shooting this at f16. It's an everything in focus. And again, I'm going to move my feet. This, the end of this piece of concrete, the end of this display, is where I'm going to walk up to, and I'm going to walk right smack up to the center of it. And now this is what I see, a completely different image, and all I did was move my feet. I did open up just a little bit, f11. I'm still kind of shooting, my ISO is a little bit high, but my shutter speed is about 1/50 of a second, and I really don't want to go much lower than that so that everything can be in focus. On the other side of this little brown rim in here is actually a little tiny waterfall. I thought about shooting over it, but there was something about this I kind of liked, so I left it in there. But now I want to break this down again. I want to get in a little bit closer, so I move off to the left. And I'm going to go back a minute because what I'm trying to shoot now is this little area over here. I'm shooting it on an angle. I'm sort of using this tree here to frame it a little bit. and these trees here, if you know the people that are happen to be parked here, if they're family members, you can leave them in. I just left them in to give you a little bit of a sense of scale. Typically for me, I would clone them out, but I have a lot of things going for me in this image. And I forgot to put my settings on here, but this is probably, I might have stopped down to F8 here if I'm not still at F11, but I have a little bit of a line going in, leading me up. This would be great if there were people, and even if there weren't, there's enough visual interest in here to keep you going. So I stopped there because there was nothing that was that close to me from looking at this that gave me a lot of interest. So what I did was moved on to one of the other rooms, and I believe this room is called the Orange Room. So this will be kind of like the third event that we're looking at. The Orange Room consists of like 2 square gardens within the room, surrounded by walkways and divided down the center by a walkway, which is what you're looking at. The front door here is really, in my opinion, it's the main door into the gardens, although everybody uses the one at the other end of the building. But this is just one aspect of this room. If I just turn my body a quarter of a turn, I kind of have a whole different feeling. I have a different sense of scale here. The columns give it height. This gives it length. A lot of people use these walkways when they're doing portraits of people inside or even their family members, but it's another way of looking at it. I wanted to try something really different next. So I walked over really to my left. This was to my right, but I walked over to the end of the room on the left and shot back this way. This looks like a completely different room, but I'm in the same place. And again, all I did was move my feet. I had my choice when I was here of which way I wanted to shoot this. And I shot it twice, but I'm only going to share one with you because I didn't like the other one. But this I shot at F8. I didn't choose to shoot it at F11 or F16. And I either focused on the windows or I focused on these flowers. I think I may have tried to focus on the flowers, but that left everything that was right in front of me out of focus. I'm okay with that. That to me adds depth to the image, but it gives you another idea that you're in another place. It gives you another composition to try when literally you have probably walked a total of 50 feet, maybe 75 feet, but you haven't walked very far. Right around the corner, if I go back to what I pointed out earlier was the main door, and I pretend like I just walked in the door and turned right, this is the little sidewalk that I see. The windows on your right are in the front of the building. A lot of times these sides are full of color. This day they weren't. But I'm going to show you now, if you just move a little bit one way or another and adjust your height, so you might have to squat down a little bit. I take one of those gardener's foam knee pads with me, carabiner on it to my bag so that when I kneel down, I don't have to kneel down on the concrete. But if you just go a couple steps to the right, and I think I just brought my camera down, I have another little view, but this time I have more of the flowers that are blooming along the front, these little yellow lilies. And I got down a little bit further. I have more of these yellow lilies, but when I reviewed it, I went, like now I have the sidewalk here, the sun's coming out, I've got a lot more shadow, I have a lot of highlights, and they're really not doing anything that I want. It was a little bit awkward and I was afraid of getting in trouble, but I did squeeze down in between the flowers and the wall that was to my right and just tried to focus on the flowers. Again, this is with my 24 to 70. This was not with what would have been my choice of a lens baby lens, but it gives you the idea if you take something big and just move and get a little closer and get a little closer and figure out what the minimum focusing distance on your lens is. I have no idea what it is on my 24 to 70, but I made this work. So now we're going to talk a little bit about how to shoot some more original flower portraits. I'm going to get into a little bit of the techniques that I use with this. And we talked about some of these a little bit earlier. So negative space. This flower I shot in my house. I didn't shoot this at Longwood Gardens, but there's grass outside the window that I used. I have 2 windows that I use in my house depending on the time of the day and the season of the year. But because the light in my house was not nearly as bright as it was outside, and I metered for my flower, I blew out the light that was outside my window, but it doesn't matter because that gave me the negative space that I was looking for. You can also try framing your subject with natural elements. The tulip on your left is just starting to come out of those green petals that surround it. I love looking for things like this, especially if you're at a garden and you have this whole bed of tulips. I like to try to find the weird ones in there or the different ones that are in there. So I have a couple of things going for me here. The tulip is sort of framed by the green, but I also have this leading line of this other one behind it. So this works on a couple of levels. The image on the right got a little help. I saw the beautiful light coming in through the windows, and I think this is an orchid that is growing, but I believe, if I remember correctly, this was a double exposure that I did in camera. And what I was trying to do was use the framing of the windows to help frame the image. And I kind of liked it. So here I'm using something that, typically happens in nature. Here, this one had a little help. It was sort of man-made. Think about picking one aspect of a flower and find a way to highlight that. Zoom in further. Try to use a macro lens if you have one. You can add extension tubes or macro filters to, hang on a minute, because I keep moving your pictures around. Try whatever lens you have, try to do something to make it even more macro. And here I am mentioning extension tubes and filters, and I can't remember if I do this in another slide or not. But I have, I know for sure that my Lens Baby Velvet 56 has a minimum focusing distance of 5 inches. I will a lot of times put extension tubes on. Extension tubes are little attachments that go between your camera and your lens that allow you to focus closer than the minimum focusing distance on the lens. So if my Velvet 56 lets me focus at 5 inches and I put extension tubes on, I may be able to get as close as 4 inches or maybe 3 inches. It's going to depend on the tubes I use and whether or not I'm stacking it. A lot of people like to use macro filters as well. And they work similarly. They will get you a little closer. And if you stack them a little closer, and if you stack another one a little closer, you can use extension tubes and macro filters at the same time. So really what you're doing is making or creating a macro image from a lens that's not truly a macro lens. It's kind of a fun thing to do. And especially if you're not all about carrying every lens in your arsenal when you go out, I find it really helpful. All right, I guess I'm just going to roll up. So when you're looking through flowers or petals or leaves, look for something unusual. Maybe just try to highlight just the texture of the image or just a veining of a color that runs through the image. This image here might be one that I sort of wanted to do for Golden Spiral, only it never made it to the front of my image or the front of my presentation. But I'm going from the left down all the way over here to the right, and it's curling back up. I have a bit of a spiral going on here. And while you can tell this is a flower or a leaf of one kind or another, it really doesn't matter what it is. You know, it's just the feeling. It borders on abstract, and it's just kind of cool. I'm creating something that really is uniquely mine. If I go, shoulder to shoulder with the person next to me, most likely they're not coming out with the same image. This is another sort of similar idea. I'm using a shallow depth of field to focus on only a teeny tiny area in the image. I believe Chris is in the room. Chris Dewey might be in the room. I have noticed a lot of her work looking more and more like this lately, and I just keep going, yay, yay, I love it, I love it. So again, I'm creating an image that probably only I'm going to create. And this is what I think makes botanical photography really, really fun. Okay, we're really bordering on abstract here. And just to be really quick about it, in abstract photography, you may or may not be able to tell what your subject is. Now, we're shooting botanicals tonight, so we can reasonably assume that what we are shooting is some kind of a plant. The lines, the shapes, the textures, all combined with the techniques that I talked about tonight can really come together and create an image that has a feeling of mystery or the element of awe and wonder, the sense of the unreal. But again, what I really want to emphasize is something that's unique to you. In order to do that, a lot of times I will use ICM. I'm going to go over this a little bit quickly here because there are so many varied ways of doing this. There is no magical equation, but typically your shutter speeds are 1/10 of an inch or slower. Can they be faster? Absolutely. Aperture, I tend to close down a lot, but it's really because I don't want to have to get my neutral density filter out. So I take the lazy way out. But I also find that if I'm closing down, my camera is picking up maybe on the lines or the variation in color in an image, which can be very helpful. Your ISO should be as low as your previous settings will allow. So I typically will pick an aperture, then pick a shutter speed when I do this, and then set my ISO. Movements can be anything that you want it to be. You can do vertical, horizontal, circular, wavy, zigzaggy, diagonals. You can start in and just physically pull your camera out, like go all the way in till you get focus and pull your camera out. You can start out and get focus and pull your camera back in. It can be any of that. So this is just a quick video. Now, I apologize because you'll see in one of the reflections, I'm holding my camera trying to video while I'm moving my camera with my other hand. And this happens to be my old D750. My mirrorless was in the shop when I was playing with this. But I want you to pay attention to how I am moving the camera. You'll see me twisting in different ways. You'll see me putting the camera in and pulling it out. One of the things that I realized I wasn't doing in a couple was I may not be like stopping to get focus completely in between all of them, but I will show you an image I got from doing this little exercise here. So just rotated the camera. I did a little hump. Did another little hump the other direction. Did a little wiggle. I went in and pulled back. I started out and went back in. Tried another different wiggle. All right. Okay. Here's the image that I took, the favorite one of that series of images that I took. This I shot at f11. I was at ISO 80 and at 4/10 of a second. So I used the variation in color and the lines of the petals to create an abstract image. Again, this is going to be uniquely mine. It's not going to look the same as the person to my left or to my right that might be trying this. The same can be said for this image. I don't even remember what flowers these were, but it was one of those little plantings where they had like two different color flowers in the same bed. And I was just playing with my camera. There are times when, especially if I'm walking along, along the edge of a garden and it's one of those big long plantings, I will just move my camera and keep walking. And I will look at the pictures when I get home. I don't keep trying to adjust what it is I'm doing all the time. Well, I may not look when I get home. I might look every couple of images, but I really just play with it. And that, the idea of creating, the idea of playing is what makes this fun. It's what makes me want to keep coming back and doing it. This one I did on my cell phone. I used the slow shutter app. So I realized that most of what I've taken today has been with a kit lens or with my lens babies, but you can do a lot of this stuff with your cell phone. This is the slow shutter app. I have created what I think are some really fun images just using my cell phone. I was out this afternoon at the gardens and I had my Z7 II with me. I had two of my lens babies with me, and I still pulled my cell phone out. So don't think that just because you're walking around with your big girl or your big boy camera that you can't pull out your cell phone too and have a little bit of fun. Again, another intentional camera movement where you can still see there's enough definition in these leaves, and I believe this was a poinsettia, but I created abstract. I created something that, the colors are blurring together, the lines are blurring, but almost looking like a double exposure. So you can really have a lot of fun with this. This is one of those images where I probably started close in and pulled back. Kind of gives you that bursty kind of effect. So you can do something like that to get abstract. You can also just use shallow depth of field a lot of times. Use a really wide aperture. So if you remember like f1.4, 1.8, 2.8, even f4 on a lens baby might do it for you. Get in as close as you absolutely can. So know what that minimum focusing distance of your lens is. Use extension tubes to get you closer, macro filters to get you closer, or combine the two of them. So I'm going to show you a couple of images next where I got so close that there was really nothing technically in focus in my image, but you can still tell there's enough definition. You can tell sort of what's there. And there was a whole lot of drops on whatever it is was here because I got some really fun bokeh with this. Here's another image, and I believe this was one of the dahlias from my garden. Again, you can tell it's botanical. You can tell it's a flower, but you probably couldn't tell that this was actually a dahlia unless I had told you that. The next image, it's really funny. Every once in a while, I take one of these images that just resonates with me, like every time I go back and look at it. And this is one of them. And this was just a leaf with raindrops on it. This really weird looking bokeh that has lines on it came from a lens baby lens. I remember to ask the question, why did a lens baby lens do this? But I don't remember what the answer is, to be honest with you. But I just think it's kind of fun. There are some really other fun ways to create flowers. And that's with shooting through items. Now, what I'm showing you right now, I use Lens Baby Omnis. And the Omni is a system of like crystals and filters and like plastic things that you can attach to your lens. There's a like a like a disc that attaches to the front of your lens with a hole in the center of it. And the Omni pieces can actually magnetically attach to that. They can slide around and move, and there's little arms so you can put them further or closer to your lens if you wish. This was an image that I did when I was beta testing what is known as the shapes pack. And there's something about this image that makes me feel like this flower is behind bars and underwater. It has this crazy, crazy bokeh on it. This is really kind of abstract. You sort of feel like it's a flower. The center of this flower to me looks more like a pom-pom though than a flower. So I don't know, but it was one of those weird images that just resonated with me. So I kept it. It was not one that went to the trash. You can use negative space and fill it. Again, I'm using one of my favorite windows in my house here, but I'm using a crystal that is sort of using a reflection of my image in what would have been negative space. And I just kind of made it a bit of a more ethereal flower. Look for unusual angles. Okay, this is kind of a smaller version of moving your feet. Explore the garden bed, explore the bouquet of flowers that you have on your table. Look underneath, look behind, look from above. These actually were, this image is actually sunflowers that were growing in my garden, and the flowers were hitting like side to side, but the petals were moving in opposite directions. Again, it creates a bit of an abstract image, but with some realism in there, because if you know what a sunflower looks like, you might be able to figure out that they are indeed sunflower petals. It's just kind of fun and a different way of looking at things. Use light, and here I say lack thereof, but what it really is lack thereof is detail. I really wanted to focus on the textures on the underneath of this rose. And because it was such a bright day, I totally lost the white rose in this image. But I didn't care because it gave me more of an abstract feel. It gave me an image that nobody else was going to like. And it resonates with me, and I'm the one that needs to like my images. You're the one that needs to like your images. So if it resonates with you, by all means, keep it. Play with shadows. This tulip was in a vase with a bunch of other tulips, a similar color. And I was in front of one of my favorite windows again. But as I was turning the vase around to look at the different compositions, because there's certain areas where I want to shoot where I'm not getting direct sun. Sometimes I pull it off to the side because there's an area of the window frame that's causing, like, it's causing my bouquet or my flowers to be in a little bit of shade or at least out of direct sunlight. This little drop got hit by just a little tiny ray of light. And when I focused on the drop and when I metered for the drop, the whole rest of this flower and the arrangement, the flowers behind it were really dark. And I just had this little tiny line of light coming down and then illuminating the drop. And I'm like, there is my shot. There is what I've been looking for and spending my time trying to find while I'm here. Multiple exposure can be another avenue to pursue with your flowers. This could probably be a whole evening. And again, there is no magical equation. There is so much with multiple exposure that is subjective. It's really something that you just have to play with. Okay. With multiple exposure, you're combining two or more images, either in camera or in post-processing. Most of today's cameras are capable of some form of multiple exposure. You have to check with your camera manual. I know my D750 would let me take 2, I believe, images. My D7 II will let me take 10 and we'll combine them in camera. There's cell phone apps where you can do multiple exposures. So check your manuals, read your manuals, and then think about playing with it. If you have a camera that doesn't allow you to do multiple exposures, or you're not comfortable, but you're comfortable with post-processing, you can do this in Photoshop. So in Photoshop, you're going to layer images, and then typically you're going to pick a blend mode. I know a lot of people that say, oh, well, I always pick, say, lighten, or I always pick darken. I pick the whole line. I scroll down and look at what every one of them looks like, and then I go back and decide which one I like the best. Because there are times when I have been totally surprised at how one of those blend modes has completely changed my image, but it changed it for the better. So you really have to play. Just take your time and have fun with it. This is one of those times when I got that unexpected result. And this, I'm going to guess, was lightened because these flowers all had stems, they all had leaves, but nothing showed up. And I went, I don't know, but it was funny because I came back the next day and tried this again because I didn't save it the first time and it was nagging at me. Play. If you see it, just go ahead and save it. You can always delete it later if you decide you don't like it. Sometimes it may be hard to come back to. This is one I did in camera. And again, this was dahlias that I had growing in my yard. And this was, I shot with the shallow depth of field, but I shot one image in focus and one image out of focus. But it was the way that I layered them when I shot it out of focus that this was in focus, but everything else fell off into blur. You can shoot the same thing, but just move a little bit to the left, move a little bit to the right, or move up or move down. You could do this, shoot it as a 4 image and do the same thing. You kind of get really cool effects. Like I feel like I'm looking through, like I'm down on the ground looking through a planting of tulips when this is just 3 tulips in a pot. So all of this to say, move your feet. Consider your angles. Look for framing. Change your angles, change your framing. Use depth of field, use light, use shadow, use movement. Make things smaller. Consider compositions. Try new techniques. The possibilities out there are absolutely endless, but you need not to be afraid. You need to just try it. Just have fun. If it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. All right. Linda, you didn't stop me. Did anybody have any questions?
Yes. They were general, so I was pretty good with keeping them towards the end. Okay, so when you do a double image in camera, are you on a tripod or are you shooting something in 2 different places?
I am almost never on a tripod.
Okay.
I basically only use my tripod if I am going to do a long exposure of some point. I have been known to change lenses in between my double exposures. So I may, like the one image that I had, and let me go back to it. The image on the bottom right here. This was on one wall, the window was on the other wall. So I literally walked across the wall, like walked across the room when I did that. I don't always do that. It just depends on what is available to me in a reasonable distance from where I am.
Okay.
Anything else?
Yes, okay, this is a good question from Mika. How much post-processing do you actually do with your ICM work?
I clone out the spots. No, and that is, well, and because I do a lot of, and one thing I didn't bring up, one technique that I didn't bring up that I do a lot is reverse free lensing. I will take off my lens and turn it around. That's another way to make a more macro image out of a non-macro lens. So I have to clean my sensor very frequently. So that is typically the first thing I do. I will also probably um add, like, I will play with the texture and the clarity sliders in Lightroom. I may play with saturation of colors, but I try not to do a lot of post-processing at all, to be perfectly honest with you.
Okay.
The number one thing is really cloning dust spots.
Okay, dust spots. And as I'm getting older, my vision's getting worse. I will tell you that, okay, this is just me being funny and punchy, but when I was looking at your presentation, because there's like little spots here on the graphics, I'm like, is that on my computer?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Hey, I'm over here cleaning, and then I realized, no, I think that's part of the graphic design. I don't see any other questions. You want to
All
make.
right. So I know Linda gave you this information here before, but I have two websites. One
Mhm.
of them is cathykuhlmanphotography.com. That is my main website that I probably haven't done anything to in years. The next one, this www.cathyalicephotography.com, is just my Lens Baby portfolio. If you're interested in Lens Baby lenses, maybe you want to know what a particular one does, maybe you're trying to pick out your next one. In this portfolio, there are probably about 12 pictures. And if you scroll over the picture, it will tell you what lens or optic, or if it was Omni, that each of the pictures behind that image were shot with. So if you want the Velvet 56 and you scroll over and it says Velvet 56, click on that. And everything in there will be shot with the Velvet 56. I'm working my way through adding that. If I added an Omni to it, I'm trying to like work that into it too, but it'll still give you an idea of where I started with that image.
Okay. Do you have that next slide you want to share?
I do.
All
Okay.
right, because I'm seeing our East Coasters drop off because it's bedtime.
Yeah. Well, I'm an East Coaster. Yeah. All right. So because you joined me here tonight, I can offer you $50 off any Lens Baby product of $100 or more. But the only glitch with that is the product cannot be on sale. The code that you will use at checkout at lensbaby.com is capital T, capital H, and the number 50. So THH for the happiness hour, and 50 at lensbaby.com. The code's good for 6 months, so you don't feel like you have to rush off. Um, and it can be used for all products on the Lens Baby site as long as it's not on sale.
That sounds wonderful.
It
And
is. I also have an affiliate code, which is not on this. It was on the other one. The affiliate code is, and it's all capitals. It's W and my last name. So WKUHLMAN. That gets you 10% off most items at lensbaby.com. Usually they will not allow you to use it on new releases, although right now the Omni Neon is out there and they're letting us use or they're letting people use it on that. And occasionally they won't let you use it on a sale, but I'm going to tell you it never hurts to try. And when you use these codes, typically I will get a kickback on the back end. So these are affiliate links too, or affiliate discounts, I guess you would call it.
yeah, that's great. You gave me away when you said Linda said that I have a hard time when I walk into a big garden. I really do. It's hard to like break it up in little spots. So again, this is just more evidence of this is more of my selfish hour. And thank you for indulging me. This is
Linda, I went to a garden today that I've been to several times. I've never been to it in the spring, and I did the same thing today. Where am I starting? Like, how do I do this? I absolutely did the same thing, and I said, well, you just follow your own advice.
yeah.
Once I got done my pet ventosa tree, then I did a. I think I told Linda that before. I went to this garden because I needed to do a pet ventosa exercise. But then I went back and just with my lens just to do it. But I said, how do I make this smaller? I followed my own advice.
Perfect. Well, I appreciate you coming and sharing. And if you'll do one presentation, you'll do a second presentation. I'm going to aim for that triple. So just be prepared. All right. Don't go. I'm going to go ahead and close down the recording, but we always have a little after party after the main thing. So if you can hold tight, I'll be right back.
I'm
All right.
here.
All right. Next week, Scott Setterberg will be here to share his presentation, Mastering Waterfall Photography. Until next time, go out and create something beautiful, and I hope that we see you again soon.